All right, welcome back to the SuperCoach Nuff channel, and welcome to NFL Fantasy. Did say NRL, didn't I? So, yeah, I guess as we prepare to get to the end of the NRL Fantasy SuperCoach end of the season, we're all looking for something to do to bide our time. And I guess my preferred method of doing that is with a little bit of NFL fantasy. So, I guess for those who aren't too familiar with it, Um, like for most people, it seems like a standard sort of draft that we've got draft mode in SuperCoach and then NRL Fantasy. Um, and you might think, oh, it's kind of boring, but I think the NFL Fantasy, the way they do their drafting and or the draft leagues that you can have, does make it quite interesting. So I guess we've got three different leagues here. I won't go through them all because none of them are really set up for the year. Um, but I guess on the right hand side here is a standard league. I just joined at random, and I pretty much auto drafted my team, and I think I went close to winning it. Just yeah, had some nice picks and that sort of thing that worked out well. But that was just the standard sort of snake draft, I suppose. Um, and with the usual sort of generic type squad setup. And then the Pissheads League. So I guess this is actually out of the Great Oz Auction. So one of the different styles of draft that you can have in NFL fantasy is a salary cap or an auction style draft, which I guess is a bit closer related to what we're used to in Supercoach and NRL fantasy. And I think it's actually a more fun version because rather than the formulaic snake where you can sort of predict what everyone's going to pick, and your position in the draft highly dictates who you're going to end up with. With the auction or salary cap, you get a set amount, and it's super easy to calculate too because in most leagues by default they're only $200. So they don't use their actual salary figures because obviously in America the salaries are crazy. Uh, but yeah, you buy a player. So if you're really keen on having a team that has, say, Patrick Mahomes and Justin Jefferson and Christian McCaffrey, um, you can. You're just probably gonna have to spend most, if not all, of your $200 on those three players. Um, so yeah, it's really good because there's more strategy to it, I think, and the ability to buy and well, you don't sell the players, you buy them and then you trade them as you would normally in a draft league. But I think that auction element just adds a lot to it. And then usually off the back of that, we have the Piss Heads League. So that's, I guess, the boys that get together for the live um, draft of that. We got a tradition going to the pub and getting on the sauce. And then once we're well lubricated, we have this other league. It was just the four of us, and basically it was just stacked with like you had to have three quarterbacks and five wide receivers or six wide receivers, something ridiculous. But because there's only four of us, obviously there's a lot to pick from, and yeah, and I guess sort of trying to remember because we weren't doing them off our own devices too. It was more like an offline style draft. Um, and yeah, and it's hard to remember who you've got or who's been taken when you are several jars in. So, um, yeah, so I guess just to sort of highlight, a bit more about how it works. Um, I'm not going to start the league today, but we'll definitely try to set one up if there is anyone out there interested in joining up for the first time. Um, yeah, obviously league name and stuff is quite basic, but the two formats, as we said, is standard. So that's where you draft and you pick. Does it have the type of draft here? No. Yeah, so I think you can set up. There is different ways of picking the draft, but generally it's the snake method. So first round, the first pick goes through to the last pick, and then the second round, the last person picks first and goes back the opposite way. Or you have the salary cap. So there you can see you set a budget. There's a nomination time and offer time. So essentially what they mean is if it's your turn to nominate a player, you may nominate someone that you want to buy, or you might nominate someone that you're trying to get someone else to buy. There's a bit more strategy around that. but you have some time to pick. Then you have time to put in offers, and also offer reset. So, you can't do like a bit of eBay sniping and buy with 1 second to go. If you try that, it just resets back to 10 seconds. So, um, yeah, so yeah, you can set up that sort of stuff. And then, you can set up all sorts of different things around the number of teams. Obviously, weeks per playoff match is just one. You can have up to 12 teams in the playoffs, or you can have as few as four. It depends on your league size and numbers. You can get some more advanced stuff too. So this is what I mean. When you get into it, it's really cool. You can have an undroppable list. So basically, you don't have a team where someone picks players and then drops them all so that, they can pick them up on their other team to create a super team. It's pretty handy. You can limit the amount of trades per season. Generally, the ones I play are, as many as you want. Um, yeah, waiver period. So I guess, the amount of time you have to wait before you can pick up players that are available. It does help, some players that aren't necessarily straight on when it opens, particularly in Australia. All the games and stuff are at weird times. Keeper league as well. So obviously, if you've played SuperCoach and NRL, you might know about that. But essentially, it's when you go season on season, you can, um, you know, keep multiple players so they're not put back into the draft pool for the next season. You can also see you can select how many players you want. So the general is you have one quarterback, two running backs, two wide receivers, one tight end, uh, and then I guess what they call a flex position. So generally, the flex is it's generally wide receiver, running back, or tight end. You can have what's called super flex, so that's where the quarterback's included too. Um, and yeah, I like that because generally, I guess when you have one quarterback, it's fairly even. But when you have the two quarterbacks in the game, that adds more strategy because the quarterbacks do score well, but obviously if you can only have one, well then there's plenty to choose from. If there's two, you've got to work out whether you go hard to get the second quarterback at the premium price, or if you forsake that to get some better wide receivers, running backs, those types. Yeah, so I guess it depends on how you want to play. Then the scoring as well, so you can see some general stuff for offense. Um, so yeah, things like passing yards and passing touchdowns for your quarterbacks, in intercepts as well. Rushing yards, so that's mostly your running backs. Receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns, so wide receivers obviously, but tight ends and running backs also in some cases are eligible for receptions and receiving yards and that sort of thing. And then also your defense. So you get points for the defense that you pick. Generally, it'll be defensive team, but in some games you do have to actually pick what they call individual defensive positions. Never played that before. It's probably a bit too hard for me. Don't. It's hard enough getting your head around some of the offensive players, to be fair. Um, and then yeah, create your team and you're away. You can also adjust the scoring too. So I know in some games they do things like just 4 points for the receiving touchdown and stuff. I guess a common one is what they call points per reception or non. So PPR, points per reception or non PPR. So if you're depending on how you're playing, that affects because some players will get more receptions but less yards. Others will get less receptions but more yards because they're further up the field when they catch it. And you can also add in all this other stuff too if you really want. So yeah, so you can pretty much customize it the way you want, which is pretty cool, and I like. As I said, I was pretty lucky to get into a salary cap league that has two quarterbacks, and so for me that just made it a lot more interesting and exciting. So we'll probably set up something like that for the little community that we've got going here. And if you want to join, obviously throw it in the comments, say that you're interested. We'll get a gauge on the potential number of teams that we can have. And then I guess once we're more settled on the number of teams and we get people in, we'll work out things like a draft date. Might try my hand at the live streaming. I haven't done that yet, so that's exciting. Um, and yeah, and I guess as well, in the coming weeks we'll get some content out around, the sort of top players in each position to get to know them if you're, completely new to the game. Or some, I guess, what they call sleepers and, sort of value type picks that, appear probably later in most drafts that you might want to keep an eye on, that sort of thing. In saying that, there is lots of great content out there, and as always, I'm probably going to borrow heavily from that. But yeah, I guess I'll try to tailor it for rugby league types that might not be too familiar with the game, and we'll go from there. So, just wanted to do a quick one, just to introduce the NRL fantasy stuff for the season, and let you know that it's on. Like I said, if you're interested, let me know in the comments section below. Or, if you want to see more NFL content, something as simple as liking the video would be fantastic. Also, subscribing to the channel. All right, we're going to keep the content coming all through the year, so you don't need to stress about having an off season. I might be looking for one at some point, but I think definitely with the NFL stuff, we'll be able to produce something once a week. I have talked about Fantasy Premier League too. It's a bit harder because there's midweek game weeks and stuff, and yeah, but we'll do our best. But yeah, we'll leave it there. So, I've done the comment, like, subscribe thing. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.